Can you guess which life cycle we'll be learning about next? In today's read aloud, you will learn that frogs are amphibians. Say amphibian with me 3 times. Amphibian, amphibian, amphibian. An amphibian is an animal that can live on both the land and in the water. When amphibians are in the water, they breathe through gills. When amphibians are on the land, they breathe through lungs. Can you describe an amphibian? What color is it? Does it look like it has rough skin or smooth skin? Does it have webbed feet? Our story today is the life cycle of a frog. Did you know there are thousands of different kinds of frogs in the world? Frogs don't all look alike either. Frogs can be all different sizes and colors. The smallest frog in the world was just recently discovered in Papua New Guinea. It is smaller than a dime. The largest frog in the world is the Goliath frog from Africa. It can grow up to 3 feet long and weigh 7 pounds. Frogs live on every continent in the world except Antarctica. Why do you think frogs don't live in Antarctica? Frogs don't live in Antarctica because it is too cold. Although there is a frog that lives just inside the Arctic Circle, which is near the North Pole. Do you know what a group of frogs is called? A group of frogs is called an army. Okay, now that you know some cool facts about frogs, let's find out about their life cycle. Just like a chicken, a frog's life cycle includes birth, growth, reproduction, and death. The reproduction stage creates new life so that the cycle repeats over and over again. Have you ever stood at the edge of a pond or a stream in the spring and spotted a jelly-like substance floating on the water? If so, you have just seen the first stage of a frog's life. The first stage of a frog's life is the egg. The jelly-like substance is frog spawn, which is hundreds of soft, jelly-like eggs. In the center of each egg is a tiny black dot. Each black dot is a tiny embryo that will soon become a tadpole. A developing young frog is called an embryo at the early stages, and then a tadpole at its later stages of developing. The mother frog lays her eggs in water in the spring. When the cold winter months are over and the water has warmed enough for her eggs to survive, a mother frog lays hundreds of eggs at one time. Female frogs lay hundreds of eggs at one time because not all the eggs will survive. Unlike hens, frogs do not usually stay with their eggs, so predators like fish, birds, and water insects are likely to eat some of the eggs. But some of the eggs will survive and eventually develop into tadpoles. Just as a developing chick is nourished by the yolk of an egg as it grows, a developing frog is also nourished by a yolk-like material within the egg. Within a few days or weeks of its development, depending on the type of frog, the embryo develops into a tadpole with a head and a tail. Soon after that, when its gills are formed, it's ready to hatch out of the egg. Gills allow the tadpole to breathe underwater also. Fish have gills too. Once a tadpole hatches, it lives in the water. A tadpole has a long, flat tail which it uses to swim. Its gills allow it to get oxygen from the water. Tadpoles swim about in search of food. Although they still feed on leftovers from the egg, they also search for small green water plants. Tadpoles grow very quickly, especially in warm water. After some time, the tadpole begins its transformation into a frog. When a living thing undergoes a huge change in shape, this process is called metamorphosis. Say that word with me, please. Metamorphosis. Tadpoles change quite dramatically from a fish-like creature with gills into a four-legged creature with lungs. Let's find out more about this remarkable metamorphosis. After the appearance of a head and the tail, the tadpole grows its back legs. Gradually, lungs develop inside its body, and its gills begin to disappear. Because it has lungs, the tadpole can now breathe air. Next, front legs begin to grow. As a tadpole's legs grow, its tail gets smaller. The tadpole still uses its tail and its legs to swim through the water. Also, it begins to use its legs to climb onto plants in the water. Gradually, the tadpole's legs grow longer and stronger, and the tail disappears completely. At this stage, the tadpole is a young frog, and it can leave its watery home and use its lungs to breathe. For many types of frogs, all this happens in about 12 weeks. At this stage of development, the young frog is about an inch long. Very young frogs are often called froglets. Young frogs leave the pond to find tasty treats on land, but they do not go far from their watery home. On land, they search for small insects, worms, and slugs. They catch food with their long, sticky tongues. They have to be very careful, though, because a lot of animals, such as snakes, lizards, and birds, will eat young frogs. Do you know what an animal is called when it can live in water and on land? An animal that can live in water and on land is called an amphibian. Frogs are amphibians. Although frogs spend a lot of time on land, they stay fairly close to water. Frogs need to keep their skin damp. Instead of actually drinking water, they absorb water through their skin like a sponge. Frogs breathe through their skin when they are in water, but they breathe through lungs when they are on land. They also seek out water when they want to cool down. If water is not nearby, they sit in the shade. They sit in the sun when they want to warm up. In winter, many frogs hibernate. They burrow or dig a hole in the mud at the bottom of the pond. If they can't find a pond, they seek out a damp place, such as a pile of logs, to spend the winter. The young frog has to survive until it is 2 or 3 years old to become a parent. Frogs have various characteristics that help them survive. Their skin color is often part of their natural habitat. This helps them blend into the background and avoid hungry predators. This is a form of camouflage. Frogs can hop quickly out of reach, too. They are excellent swimmers. They can jump into the nearest pond or river to avoid danger. Some frogs have poisonous skin to protect them from predators. All frogs have large, bulging eyes. This helps them to more easily find their own food and to avoid becoming dinner for some other creature. When a frog is between 2 and 3 years old, it will return to the pond where it was born. At this stage, the frog is now considered an adult. In spring, male frogs will croak loudly to let the females know that they are ready to mate. As with chickens, eggs must be fertilized by a male frog or else they will not develop into baby frogs. And so the life cycle begins all over again. Each spring, a jelly-like substance appears in ponds and rivers. It is frog spawn, or hundreds of small eggs containing tiny embryos. In time, they will hatch into tadpoles. And a little while later, these tadpoles will turn into frogs that will live for 7 or more years. It is amazing that frogs change their appearance so dramatically throughout their life cycle, from egg to tadpole to adult. Next, we will learn about the incredible transformation or metamorphosis in another creature's life cycle. Stay tuned.